It was a morning like any other, filled with the familiar rush of getting ready and the soft hum of routine, until a single shocking discovery shattered my sense of normalcy. As I hurriedly prepared to buckle my daughter into her car seat, my hand brushed against something unexpected hidden between the worn cushions of my husband's car. In that split second, I pulled out a neatly wrapped tampon, a discovery so out of place that it sent a jolt of icy dread racing through my veins. My heart pounded and a surge of panic mixed with disbelief overwhelmed me. How could this intimate item, so personal and private, end up in our family car? The implications were immediately unsettling, stirring a storm of suspicion and anxiety that I could neither explain nor ignore. Each thought was laced with betrayal, and every heartbeat echoed with the fear that my trust had been irreparably broken. In that tense, heart-stopping moment, the car transformed from a symbol of our shared life into an arena of hidden secrets and silent alarms. I sat there, paralyzed by the weight of this inexplicable intrusion, knowing deep down that this was only the beginning of a harrowing unraveling of the life I once thought I knew. After the initial shock still pulsing through my veins, I turned to my husband with trembling hands and a desperate need for an explanation. My heart was still racing from the discovery in his car when I mustered the courage to confront him. His reaction, however, left me both relieved and bewildered. With a nonchalant shrug, he casually suggested that the tampon might belong to his coworker, Fiona, a woman we both knew well and with whom he often carpooled. In that moment, his words felt like a feeble attempt to downplay a situation that had already sent my mind spiraling into a whirlwind of doubt and unease. I wanted to believe him, to convince myself that this was nothing more than a bizarre, isolated accident, innocent mistake that could easily occur during the chaotic rush of our everyday lives. He painted a picture of mundane misplacement, insisting that perhaps Fiona had inadvertently left it behind during one of their routine outings. His tone was calm and dismissive, as if the idea of an unintentional mix-up could instantly dispel the dark cloud of suspicion now hovering over our marriage. Yet, as he spoke, a cold shiver crawled up my spine. Every word he uttered seemed to mask an unsettling nonchalance, deepening my sense of foreboding rather than alleviating my concerns. I wrestled internally with a surge of conflicting emotions. Part of me clung to his explanation, while another part, fueled by a growing intuition, whispered that something was amiss. In that fraught moment, the simple explanation he offered felt as flimsy as a paper shield against a storm, leaving me trapped between reluctant acceptance and a gnawing dread that this was only the beginning of a far more tangled and painful unraveling. Days passed, but the nagging feeling in my chest refused to subside. My husband's explanation about the tampon in his car seemed too convenient, too rehearsed. Just when I thought I might be overreacting, fate threw me another unsettling clue. It happened on an ordinary afternoon while I was looking for socks in our dresser drawer. My fingers brushed against something soft and out of place, another tampon. My stomach churned as I pulled it out, feeling a strange sense of déjà vu wash over me. This time, it wasn't a random find in the car, but right here in our home. Was this truly just a coincidence? Or was it a message I was refusing to see? Panic began to claw at me as I carefully examined the package. It looked identical to the one I had found in the car, the same brand, the same style. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening behind the scenes, something I was being deliberately kept in the dark about. I had to get answers, no more pretending everything was fine. I quickly texted Fiona, telling her there was an emergency and asking if she could meet me. My heart raced, pounding in my ears as I watched the screen, waiting for her response. When she finally replied, she agreed to meet me at a nearby cafe. It was my chance to finally get the truth. When I met Fiona, the conversation started off as casual, with me attempting to mask the tightness in my throat. But as I casually mentioned the tampons, she seemed to freeze for just a moment too quick to be a mere coincidence. When I asked if she could hand me one of the tampons she had with her, she fumbled nervously before offering me a pack eerily similar to the ones I had discovered. It was almost as if the universe had conspired to place this moment in front of me, as though all the dots were slowly connecting, each one pointing in a direction I dreaded to acknowledge. The weight of the truth was pressing down on me, and I could no longer ignore it. The discovery of the tampons had left me rattled, but nothing could have prepared me for the next unsettling moment. It was early one morning when my daughter came into the living room wearing something that caught my attention immediately, an outfit I had never seen before. She was dressed in an adorable onesie, complete with a matching headband, a combination of colors and styles that looked entirely foreign to me. As she twirled around, giggling and oblivious to the storm brewing in my mind, I felt a chill spread through me. I was the one who always picked her clothes, and yet here she was in something I had never bought, something I didn't even remember seeing in the store. At first, I tried to brush it off, convinced that maybe I had just forgotten, but something about it didn't sit right. The headband, the fabric, even the patterns on the onesie, they all screamed outsider. I thought of my husband, of Fiona, and that annoying suspicion returned with a vengeance. Who else had been involved in my daughter's life without my knowledge? Who else had been in our home, infiltrating the very fabric of our family without my consent? I confronted my daughter as casually as I could, but her response made my heart race. "Aunt Fiona gave it to me," she said, matter-of-factly, her eyes wide and innocent. It felt like the ground beneath me had shifted, the floor no longer stable. Fiona had given my daughter a gift I had never seen, and now, all the pieces seemed to fall into place in the most horrifying way. I felt trapped, suffocated, as the truth I'd been denying finally reared its ugly head. My family, my world was slowly unraveling, and I had no idea how to stop it. After the unsettling discovery of my daughter's mysterious new outfit, I couldn't ignore the growing sense that something was seriously wrong. My suspicions about Fiona, my husband's involvement, and the creeping doubt about the state of our relationship pushed me to a breaking point. I knew I needed answers, and I wasn't going to sit in the dark any longer. So I decided to install security cameras around the house, thinking it would give me some much-needed peace of mind. Little did I know, I was about to uncover the truth in a way I never expected. One evening, while I was at work, I checked the footage out of curiosity. What I saw stopped me dead in my tracks. The video clearly showed a woman I didn't recognize walking into our house, hand in hand with my husband's sister, Sarah. They were accompanied by my husband and their 2 children, including my daughter. The shock hit me like a tidal wave. My own husband had lied to me, denying any visitors, but here they were on tape, crossing the threshold of our home like it was nothing. The nerve. The audacity. I couldn't breathe as the footage played out. Sarah, my sister-in-law, was never invited to our home yet. There she was, stepping in as though she had every right to be there. And my husband, standing there with his usual nonchalance, pretended nothing had happened. His betrayal felt deeper than I could have imagined, and the stark realization that he had been hiding this from me hit hard. I replayed the footage over and over, each time the betrayal stinging sharper. What else had he been hiding? What was he really up to? I could feel the walls closing in, and the world I thought I knew seemed to crumble before my eyes. As the pieces of this twisted puzzle slowly fell into place, I couldn't deny the overwhelming feeling that something far darker was at play. Every strange occurrence, the strange sanitary pads in the car, my daughter's unfamiliar outfit, and the mysterious woman suddenly showing up at our house was beginning to weave a disturbing pattern that pointed straight to one person, Sarah, my sister-in-law. But it wasn't just her unexpected presence that made my blood run cold. It was the sinister history that had always lingered in the shadows of her past. Sarah's history of abuse and alcoholism was something I had only heard whispers about. I had always kept my distance, wary of her toxic presence. But what I was now discovering was far more disturbing than I could have ever imagined. Sarah was not just re-entering my life uninvited. She was strategically inserting herself into my family, manipulating situations in ways I couldn't have foreseen. And it wasn't just her, it was the role my husband had played all along. As the truth unfurled, I was horrified to realize that my husband had been silently aiding and abetting Sarah in her manipulation. His subtle lies and half-truths had been the glue holding her deceit together. While I thought I was simply dealing with a family issue, it was much more insidious. My husband had been covering up the truth, helping Sarah behind my back, allowing her to weave her toxic web around our family, all while I trusted him. I felt betrayed in ways I never thought possible. The man I had married, the one I had shared my life with, had been hiding this cruel truth from me, enabling a woman with a history of abuse and addiction to invade our home and our lives. How could I have been so blind? How had he allowed this to happen? The walls closed in as I began to question everything I thought I knew about him, and the world I had once felt safe in seemed to disintegrate before my eyes. The weeks turned into months, each one heavier than the last as the web of lies and deceit spun tighter around me. The mounting evidence, the hidden sanitary pads, the mysterious outfits. Sarah's uninvited visits was like a relentless tide that kept pushing against the walls of my reality. But it wasn't just the betrayal that cut deep. It was the way my husband, the man I had built my life with, kept dismissing my concerns, gaslighting me at every turn. His denials grew more vehement, his excuses more elaborate, as if he thought I wouldn't see through the cracks in his stories. Every time I confronted him, he twisted the truth, invalidating my feelings and making me question my own sanity. The emotional toll was unbearable. I was left second-guessing everything, my thoughts, my instincts, and most tragically, my trust in him. The man I had once believed would stand by me through anything had, instead stood by his sister, a woman with a violent past, manipulating me and eroding the foundation of our marriage. It felt as though the very fabric of our relationship had unraveled, thread by painful thread, until nothing remained but a hollow, broken version of what we once had. I was furious, devastated, and utterly heartbroken. I had given him my trust, my love, and in return, he had betrayed me in the most profound way. I could no longer pretend that everything was fine, that we could fix this. The constant lies had poisoned every ounce of faith I had left in him. I had tried to make excuses, to hold on, but the more I uncovered, the more impossible it became to ignore the truth. Our marriage was no longer a partnership, it was a prison of lies, and I could feel the walls closing in, suffocating me. The weight of betrayal became unbearable, and the time had come to make a choice, one that felt like the most painful yet necessary decision of my life. The lies, the gaslighting, the deceit from the one person I had trusted above all others had shattered any semblance of trust I had left. I couldn't allow my children to grow up in an environment where dishonesty and manipulation were the norm. For their sake, and for my own sanity, I knew that I had to end it. I had to walk away from the man I had once loved and rebuild my life, even if it meant enduring the heart-wrenching process of divorce. Filing for divorce was an act of defiance against the years of lies that had kept me in a prison of my own making. As the papers were filed, I was faced with a long, grueling battle that would test me in ways I had never imagined. The emotional toll was immense, and the pain of seeing the man I had once called my partner fight me in the courts felt like another betrayal. Every day, I was reminded of the broken promises, the shattered trust, and the painful reality that this was my life now. But as difficult as it was, I knew it was the right choice. I was no longer the woman who would tolerate the lies, the manipulation, or the disregard for her worth. I was a mother, a fighter, and I would do whatever it took to protect my children and give them a future free from the toxic influence of their father's actions. The divorce was a painful, messy process, but it was the beginning of reclaiming my life and, ultimately, my freedom. The legal battle that followed was nothing short of a nightmare. The weight of the betrayal I had suffered was now compounded by the slow, exhausting grind of divorce proceedings. Each court session felt like a war, with each side presenting their case, my soon-to-be ex-husband denying the truth and refusing to take accountability for his actions. But as time went on, the truth began to emerge, slowly but surely. The evidence of his deceit, the lies, the gaslighting, it was all laid bare before the court. His attempts to paint me as the villain were laughable in comparison to the reality of what had transpired behind closed doors. Ultimately, the court ruled in my favor. The divorce was granted, and I was awarded full custody of our children, with his visitation rights severely limited. The sense of justice I had been desperately craving finally arrived, but it came with its own bittersweet sting. No matter the outcome of the legal proceedings, nothing would ever repair the damage done to my heart, to my family. I had won, but at such a high cost. In the aftermath, I was left to pick up the pieces of my life. The journey of healing was just beginning, and it was one I knew would take time. But amidst the pain, I found clarity. I had learned the most difficult and painful lesson of all that the people closest to us can sometimes be the ones who hurt us the most. Trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. And in the end, self-worth and self-respect are the most important things we can hold on to. The divorce had stripped away the illusions I had about love, about family, about the future. But it had also set me free. I was no longer shackled by lies, manipulation, or the toxic bond that had once been my marriage. I was free to rebuild my life, to be the mother and the woman I had always deserved to be, strong, independent, and determined. The lessons I had learned, painful as they were, would guide me forward, helping me avoid the mistakes of the past and embrace the hope of a future filled with truth, trust, and, eventually, healing.